The wind howled across Kami's lookout as Goku stood before the 7 Dragon Balls, their orange glow pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. His G flapped violently in the gathering storm, but his expression remained calm, resolved. Vegeta stood several paces behind him, arms crossed, his face an unreadable mask, though his eyes betrayed something deeper, a flicker of hope he would never admit aloud. "Are you certain about this, Kakarot?" Vegeta's voice cut through the wind. "The dead should remain dead. That's the natural order." Goku turned, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by something more serious. "When have we ever followed the natural order, Vegeta? We've died and come back. We've fought gods and become gods. If we have the power to right an ancient wrong, shouldn't we use it?" Vegeta's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, to maintain his pride, but the truth was that every fiber of his being yearned for this, to see his father again, to walk the red sands of his homeworld, to give his people a second chance at existence. "Then make the wish," Vegeta said quietly, turning away so Goku wouldn't see the emotion in his eyes. Goku nodded and raised his hands toward the sky. "Eternal Dragon, I summon you forth." The Dragon Balls erupted with golden light, shooting 7 beams into the heavens. The sky turned black as midnight, and storm clouds swirled into a massive vortex. From the center of the darkness, a serpentine form emerged, scales gleaming emerald green, eyes burning crimson. Shenron descended, his massive body coiling through the air, dwarfing the lookout beneath him. "You who have gathered the Dragon Balls, speak your wish, and I shall grant it." Goku took a deep breath. This was it. No turning back. "Shenron, I wish to restore planet Vegeta and all the Saiyans who died when it was destroyed, exactly as they were before Frieza destroyed them." The dragon's eyes flared brighter. "Your wish is within my power. It shall be done." The Dragon Balls flashed so brilliantly that both Goku and Vegeta had to shield their eyes. The light seemed to tear through the fabric of space itself, reaching out across the galaxy to a point of ancient destruction. For a moment, everything went silent. Then Shenron's voice echoed one final time. "Your wish has been granted. Farewell." The dragon dissolved into 7 streams of light, and the Dragon Balls shot off in different directions before falling back to the lookout, now gray and lifeless stone. The sky slowly returned to its normal blue, but Goku and Vegeta stood frozen, both sensing something profound shifting in the universe. Across the vast expanse of space, in a sector that had been empty void for decades, reality rippled and reformed. The explosion reversed. The scattered atoms of a dead world pulled back together like a film played in reverse. In a flash of blinding light, planet Vegeta materialized once more. The planet hung in space, its red soil and purple sky restored to their former glory. The capital city stood again, its white towers reaching toward the heavens, and across the entire world, in homes, in training facilities, in the royal palace itself, millions of Saiyans gasped their first breath in over 40 years. In the throne room, King Vegeta sat upright with a start, his hand instinctively reaching for the energy blast he'd been preparing against Frieza's forces. But there were no soldiers, no attack. He was simply alive, sitting on his throne as if no time had passed at all. What is this?" The king's voice echoed in the empty chamber. He looked at his hands, felt his chest, his face. Everything was real. But how? In a modest home in the lower districts, Bardock jolted awake on his bed, his wife Genie beside him. He examined his hands, turning them over slowly. The scars from his last battle were gone, healed by whatever power had brought them back. His mind raced, trying to piece together what had happened. The last thing he remembered was the blinding light of Frieza's attack, the planet exploding around him, the certainty of death. "Bardock," Genie's soft voice trembled. "What's happening? I thought we were—" "Dead," Bardock finished. "We should be dead." He stood and walked to the window, pulling back the curtain. The familiar red sky of planet Vegeta stretched above them. Saiyans were emerging from their homes in the streets below, equally confused and amazed. But we're not. Someone brought us back. The question is who and why? Far away on Earth, in the gravity chamber of Capsule Corporation, Vegeta suddenly stiffened. His eyes widened, the weighted bar he'd been lifting crashing to the ground with a metallic clang. A sensation he hadn't felt in decades washed over him. A powerful, unmistakable key signature. Royal, commanding, familiar. Father, Vegeta whispered, barely able to believe it. Goku appeared in the doorway, using instant transmission. His hand was on Vegeta's shoulder before the prince could react. You feel it too, don't you? It worked, Vegeta. They're back. For once, Vegeta didn't brush off Goku's touch. His hands trembled slightly, though he fought to control it. Kakarot, if this is some kind of... It's real, Goku said firmly. I can feel your father's ki. I can feel so many of them, including... He paused, his own voice catching slightly. Including my parents. The two warriors stood in silence for a moment, the gravity of what they'd done settling over them like a heavy cloak. Then Vegeta straightened, his composure returning. Then we should go. They'll need answers. They'll need to understand what's happened and what's changed. Right, Goku agreed. He placed 2 fingers on his forehead, locking on to the king's powerful energy signature. Vegeta gripped his shoulder tightly. Hold on. In an instant, they vanished. Goku and Vegeta materialized in the throne room of the royal palace, and the effect was immediate. King Vegeta shot to his feet, power flaring around him instinctively. Royal guards who had been gathering to understand the situation dropped into combat stances, but they froze when they saw who had appeared. Prince Vegeta? One of the guards gasped. King Vegeta's eyes narrowed as he studied the figure before him. Yes, it was his son, but different, older, stronger. The power radiating from him was unlike anything the king had ever felt from his child. And the other one, the tall Saiyan in the orange G. Father, Vegeta said, and for the first time in his life, he bowed his head in genuine respect rather than obligation. I know you have many questions. I'm here to provide answers. You dare address me so casually? And who is this low-class warrior you've brought into the royal presence? Explain yourself immediately. Goku stepped forward, unfazed by the king's intimidation. My name is Kakarot, though I go by Goku now. I'm the one who wished you all back to life. Well, I made the wish, but Vegeta supported it. Wished us back. King Vegeta descended the steps from his throne slowly, his eyes never leaving the 2 warriors. What are you talking about? What happened to planet Vegeta? The last thing I remember is Frieza's forces attacking. His face paled slightly. Frieza. He destroyed us, didn't he? Yes, Vegeta confirmed. Over 40 years ago, Frieza obliterated our homeworld and killed nearly every Saiyan in existence. Only a handful survived. Myself, Kakarot, my brother Tarbal, Nappa, Raditz, and a few others scattered across the galaxy. The king's face twisted with rage and grief. 40 years? We've been dead for 40 years? He looked around the restored throne room, his mind struggling to comprehend it. Then how is this possible? On Earth, there are 7 magical orbs called DragonBalls. When gathered together, they can summon a wish-granting dragon. I used them to bring back planet Vegeta and everyone who died when Frieza destroyed it. The king's face was silent for a long moment, processing this information. Then his eyes fixed on Goku with new intensity. You're Bardock's youngest son, the one who was sent to Earth as an infant. You know my father? Goku asked, surprised. Bardock was one of my finest warriors. Despite his low class, he had remarkable instincts and power. If you're his son, then you should be serving under me as he did. He paused, sensing the enormous power both warriors possessed. And yet, I sense you're no longer low class at all. Neither of you are what you should be. What happened in those 40 years? Vegeta and Goku exchanged glances. "Perhaps it's better if we show you," Vegeta said. Without warning, both warriors erupted with power. Their hair flashed gold, their eyes turned turquoise, and a blazing aura surrounded them. King Vegeta stumbled backward, his scouter exploding from the readings. The guards gasped, some dropping to their knees from the overwhelming pressure. "This is Super Saiyan," Vegeta explained, his voice echoing with power. "The legendary transformation that only appears once every 1,000 years. Kakarot achieved it first, I followed. Since then, we've both surpassed it multiple times." The golden aura faded, but before the king could respond, both warriors transformed again. This time, their hair turned blue, and their power multiplied exponentially. King Vegeta actually fell to one knee, unable to stand in the presence of such divine energy. "This is Super Saiyan Blue. We achieved this by training with the gods of destruction and their attendants. We're not just warriors anymore, Your Majesty. We've reached the realm of the gods." When they powered down, the king remained kneeling, his proud bearing shattered by the reality before him. His son, his prince, had become something beyond his comprehension, and a low-class warrior had achieved the same heights. "Rise, father," Vegeta said, not unkindly. "The universe has changed. The Saiyan race was nearly exterminated, but we survived. We grew stronger. And now we're giving our people a second chance. But things cannot go back to the way they were. The old ways, the old cruelty, that path led to our destruction." King Vegeta slowly stood, his face a mixture of awe, confusion, and something that might have been pride. "What would you have me do, my son?" "Help us rebuild," Vegeta replied, "but rebuild something better, something worthy of our power." Before the king could respond, the doors to the throne room burst open. Bardock strode in, his expression determined and urgent. He stopped short when he saw Goku standing there. Time seemed to freeze as father and youngest son locked eyes for the first time since Goku was an infant in a space pod. Bardock's breath caught in his throat. He'd seen the face in visions, in prophetic dreams that had haunted him before Planet Vegeta's destruction. The face of a Saiyan who would save the universe, his youngest son, Kakarot. "It's you," Bardock whispered. "You're the one from my visions." Goku smiled warmly, though his eyes glistened. "Hi, Dad. I know this is strange. I don't remember you. I was just a baby when you sent me to Earth. But I've heard stories about you, about how brave you were, how you tried to stop Frieza." Bardock took a step forward, then another, his usual gruff demeanor cracking. "I sent you to Earth to save your life. It was supposed to be a low-level planet where you could survive. I never thought—" He looked Goku up and down, sensing the incredible power within him. "What did that planet do to you?" "Earth made me who I am. I hit my head when I landed and forgot my Saiyan programming. I was raised by a kind old man who taught me martial arts and compassion. I grew up defending Earth from threats, getting stronger with each battle. Eventually, I learned about my Saiyan heritage and embraced it, but I never forgot the values Earth taught me." "You're soft," Bardock said bluntly. "I can sense it. Your power is extraordinary, but your heart is too gentle for a Saiyan."
"Maybe," Goku acknowledged. "But that softness is what helped me achieve Super Saiyan. I transformed because I cared about my friends and was angry when they were hurt. Pure anger and pride can only take you so far, Dad. You need something to fight for, not just something to fight against." Bardock frowned, clearly conflicted. Then Genie appeared in the doorway behind him, having followed her husband to the palace. She gasped when she saw Goku, immediately recognizing her baby boy despite the decades between them. "Kakarot," she breathed, tears streaming down her face. She rushed forward and embraced Goku tightly, not caring about royal protocol or warrior pride. "My baby! My sweet baby boy!" Goku returned the hug gently, surprised by the surge of emotion he felt. He'd never known his mother, never felt a parent's embrace like this. Chi-Chi's love was different, and Gohan had been his grandfather figure, but this This was the connection of blood. I call myself Goku now, Mom. But yeah, it's me, and I'm so glad to meet you. Vegeta watched the reunion with crossed arms, his expression carefully neutral, though something stirred in his chest. His own father had never shown such warmth, such open affection. It was beneath royal dignity. But seeing Kakarot, this powerful, godlike warrior being held by his mother and not caring who saw it, Vegeta wondered if perhaps the royal way wasn't the only way. Touching as this is, King Vegeta interrupted, we have more pressing matters. If Frieza destroyed our planet once, what's to stop him from doing it again? And how has the universe changed in 40 years? A lot has changed, Vegeta said. Frieza is dead. Kakarot killed him on planet Namek. Then he was brought back and became even stronger. I defeated him in that form. But recently, he achieved a new transformation called Black Frieza, and in that form, Vegeta's pride clearly stung as he admitted it, he surpasses even us. Then we're still in danger, Bardock said sharply. If that tyrant is still out there, he'll come for us. Let him come, Goku said with surprising steel in his voice. This time, all of us are here, the entire Saiyan race, plus Earth's defenders, and we're going to make sure everyone is prepared. Over the following weeks, Planet Vegeta transformed into the largest training ground in the universe. Goku and Vegeta took on the monumental task of teaching the ancient Saiyans about the transformations and techniques they'd discovered. In a massive training arena, thousands of Saiyans gathered to watch as Vegeta demonstrated the Super Saiyan transformation for the first time to the masses. The transformation isn't just about power level, Vegeta explained, golden aura blazing around him. It's about emotion. You need a trigger, pure, overwhelming emotion. For most of us, it's rage, but it can also be desperation, the need to protect someone, or even profound loss. Bardock stood at the front of the crowd, studying every detail. He'd been training relentlessly, pushing himself harder than ever before. The knowledge that his son had achieved this legendary form drove him forward with intense determination. Goku worked with smaller groups, teaching technique and control. In one session, he sparred with King Vegeta himself, showing the proud ruler just how far the art of combat had evolved. "You're fast," the king admitted, breathing heavily as he tried to land a hit on Goku's weaving form. Faster than any Saiyans have ever fought. "It's not just about speed," Goku explained, effortlessly dodging another strike. "It's about reading your opponent, feeling their energy, anticipating their moves. When you're fighting someone really strong, you can't rely on power alone. You need strategy, adaptability, and instinct." The king launched a powerful blast, but Goku simply tilted his head, letting it pass by harmlessly. Then, in a burst of speed, Goku appeared behind the king and tapped him on the shoulder. "See? You're broadcasting your attacks. Your energy spikes right before you strike. Against someone who can sense ki, that's like shouting your strategy." King Vegeta spun around, frustration and fascination warring on his face. "Teach me to control it." And Goku did. One evening, as twin moons rose over the training grounds, Bardock stood alone in the desert, attempting the transformation. He'd pushed himself to his absolute limits repeatedly, remembering every battle, every loss, every moment of rage and desperation from his life. Goku watched from a distance, not interfering, just observing. He could sense his father's power rising, fluctuating, searching for that crucial breakthrough. "Come on, Dad, you can do it," Goku whispered to himself. Bardock thought of his team, slaughtered by Dodoria. He thought of watching Planet Vegeta explode in his visions, powerless to stop it. He thought of sending his infant son away, never knowing if he'd survive. And he thought of meeting that son decades later, seeing how strong Kakarot had become without him. "I won't be left behind," Bardock growled. "Not by my own son, not by anyone." His power exploded outward. The ground cracked beneath his feet. His hair flickered between black and gold, once, twice, 3 times. And then, with a roar that shook the desert, Bardock's hair turned golden, his eyes turquoise, his power multiplying 50-fold. He'd done it. He'd become a Super Saiyan. Goku flew down, landing beside his father with a huge grin. "I knew you could do it! How does it feel?" Bardock looked at his hands, golden energy crackling around them, feeling the power surging through every cell of his body. "Like I finally understand what it means to be a Saiyan," he replied. "Not the Saiyans we were, brutal conquerors serving a tyrant, but the Saiyans we should be, warriors who fight for something meaningful." Father and son clasped forearms, Super Saiyan to Super Saiyan, and in that moment, a bond was formed that transcended the 40 years they'd spent apart. Far across the galaxy, aboard a massive flagship, Frieza sat on his hovering throne, studying a holographic display. His tail swished in agitation as he reviewed the sensor data for the 3rd time. "This is impossible," he hissed. "Planet Vegeta's energy signature has reappeared, along with millions of Saiyan life forms." His attendant, a nervous alien creature, trembled as he spoke. "Lord Frieza, shall we investigate?" "No," Frieza said coldly. "I know exactly what happened. The Dragon Balls. Someone used those accursed orbs to undo my greatest victory." His red eyes narrowed dangerously. "The question is who, and more importantly, how should I respond to this insult?" He tapped a clawed finger against his throne, thinking, "The Saiyans were dangerous enough when they served me. Now, with decades of freedom and that Super Saiyan transformation running rampant, they could pose a genuine threat. Unless I acquire a weapon powerful enough to crush them all at once." "My lord?" the attendant asked nervously.
"Broly," Frieza said simply. "Find me the legendary Super Saiyan. I have use for that monster." Meanwhile, on planet Vegeta, not all the reunions were happening in training grounds. Gohan arrived with Videl and Little Pan, using a Capsule Corp ship that Bulma had provided. The aircraft touched down near the royal palace, and Gohan stepped out, carrying his daughter. "Are you sure about this, Gohan?" Videl asked, concern in her eyes. "Meeting your great-grandparents is wonderful, but isn't this world still dangerous?" "It'll be fine," Gohan assured her. "Dad and Vegeta are here, and they're making sure everything is secure. Besides, Pan deserves to know her heritage." Goku and Jean had been alerted to their arrival and were waiting at the landing platform. When Jean saw her grandson step out of the ship, a brilliant young man with Goku's kind eyes and immense power, she couldn't help but tear up again. "Grandmother Jean," Gohan said warmly, bowing respectfully. "It's an honor to finally meet you." "Oh, stop that bowing," Jean laughed, pulling him into a hug. "We're family. And this must be little Pan." She carefully took the baby from Gohan's arms, her eyes widening with joy. "Oh, she's beautiful. She has our eyes." Bardock approached more cautiously, still uncomfortable with such open displays of emotion. But when he looked at his granddaughter, something softened in his expression. "She's strong," he noted. "I can feel her potential already." "She's a quarter Saiyan, but yes, she's already showing signs of having significant power. We're raising her to be strong, but also kind, the best of both worlds." "Like her grandfather," Bardock said, looking at Goku with something that might have been respect. The family moment was interrupted by a familiar voice. "Well, well, the studious one finally arrives." Raditz, Goku's older brother, landed beside them. He'd been resurrected along with all the other Saiyans and had been reeling from the revelation that his baby brother had become one of the most powerful beings in the universe. "Raditz," Goku greeted cheerfully, "I was wondering when you'd show up." "Kakarot," Raditz replied, still using his brother's Saiyan name. His relationship with Goku was complicated. They'd been enemies once, fought to the death even. But now, given a second chance, Raditz seemed to be reassessing everything. "I hear you're teaching the Super Saiyan transformation. I want to learn." "Sure," Goku said enthusiastically. The more of us who can transform, the better we can protect the planet. I'm not doing it to protect anyone, Raditz said defensively. I'm doing it for power. Goku just smiled. Whatever your reason, the result is the same. Come on, I'll introduce you to some of the training groups. As Goku led Raditz away, Bardock watched them go. Jean came to stand beside her husband, still cradling Pan. They're so different from us, she said softly. Kakarot especially. He's everything the Saiyans were supposed to be. Strong, brave, honorable, but also everything we weren't. Compassionate, forgiving, hopeful. He's soft, Bardock muttered, though there was no real conviction in his words. He's better than us, Jean corrected gently, and maybe that's exactly what our race needed. Bardock didn't reply, but deep down, he knew she was right. 3 weeks after Planet Vegeta's resurrection, a Capsule Corp ship arrived, carrying Bulma, Trunks, and Goten. Bulma had come with a specific purpose, to meet with the Saiyan scientists and engineers to create a proper planetary defense system. Look, she explained to a room full of skeptical Saiyan technicians, your planet was destroyed once. You need more than just strong fighters. You need early warning systems, shield generators, and defensive satellite networks. That's what I'm here to help build. King Vegeta, observing the meeting, was impressed despite himself. This Earthwoman speaks with authority, and her technological knowledge is remarkable. Bulma is the smartest person on Earth, Vegeta said with unmistakable pride in his voice. She's also my wife and the mother of my son. The king's eyebrows rose. You married an alien? I married the woman I love, Vegeta replied firmly. The same woman who gave me a family and a home when I had nothing. The same woman whose genius has saved the Earth multiple times over. If you have a problem with that, father, then you and I are going to have words. King Vegeta studied his son's face, seeing the absolute conviction there, and wisely chose to drop the subject. Times had indeed changed. While Bulma worked on planetary defenses, Vegeta had his own training to complete. He'd been pushing himself relentlessly, trying to master a new form that he'd been on the cusp of achieving for months. He'd seen Goku perfect Ultra Instinct, and it had driven him to seek his own unique path. On the red sands of his homeworld, surrounded by the crimson sky of his birth, Vegeta closed his eyes and searched within himself. Ultra Instinct was about letting go, moving without thinking. But that wasn't him. Vegeta's strength had always come from his pride, his ego, his indomitable will to be the best. What if, instead of letting go, he embraced those qualities completely? Come on, Vegeta growled to himself. This is my home, my world. If I can't achieve this here, I can't achieve it anywhere. He thought about his father, resurrected and watching from the palace. He thought about his people, reborn and depending on him. He thought about Bulma and Trunks, his family waiting back on Earth. He thought about Kakarot, always one step ahead, always pushing him to be better. I am Prince Vegeta, he declared to the desert. I am the pride of the Saiyan race. I am destruction incarnate. I am... Purple energy exploded around him, different from any transformation before. His hair remained black, but took on a purple sheen. His eyes burned violet. Dark markings appeared across his body, divine and terrible. I am Ultra Ego. The power was intoxicating. Unlike Ultra Instinct's calm precision, this form fed on damage, on destruction, on the thrill of battle. The more he was hit, the stronger he became. It was perfect for him. Goku appeared via instant transmission, his eyes widening when he sensed Vegeta's new transformation. Vegeta, you did it! You found your own path! Of course I did, Vegeta replied, but there was a fierce satisfaction in his voice rather than mere arrogance. Now we're truly equals, Kakarot. Your Ultra Instinct and my Ultra Ego. Let the universe tremble. But even as they celebrated Vegeta's achievement, both warriors felt a chill run down their spines. They turned simultaneously, looking up at the sky, sensing something approaching. Something dark, something powerful, something that radiated malice like a dying sun radiated heat. "Frieza," they said in unison. The alarms Bulma had installed began wailing across planet Vegeta. On massive display screens throughout the capital city, the threat became visible. A vast armada of ships emerging from hyperspace, so numerous they blotted out the stars. At the head of the fleet was Frieza's flagship, larger and more menacing than ever. King Vegeta stood on the palace balcony, his face pale as he stared at the approaching ships. "So many," he whispered. "We never saw this many when he attacked before." "That's because last time he didn't need them," Bardock said grimly, standing beside the king. "He destroyed our planet with a single attack. This time, he knows we're ready for him." Throughout the planet, Saiyans took to the sky in massive formations, thousands of warriors ready to defend their resurrected homeworld. Thanks to the training Goku and Vegeta had provided, many had achieved Super Saiyan, and all of them were significantly stronger than they'd been in life. Goku and Vegeta stood at the front of the formation, both transformed into Super Saiyan Blue, their divine ki blazing like twin stars. "Let me handle the communications," Vegeta said. He raised his hand, and his voice, amplified by his ki, boomed across the void of space. "Frieza, this is Prince Vegeta of the Saiyans. Turn your ships around and leave this sector, or we will destroy you." From the flagship, Frieza's mocking laughter echoed back. "Oh, my dear prince, how delightful to hear your voice again, and how bold you've become. But I'm afraid I must decline your generous offer. You see, I went to considerable trouble to exterminate your race once. I won't allow someone to simply undo my hard work." The flagship's main viewport illuminated, revealing Frieza in his final form, tail swishing with amusement. But he wasn't alone. Standing beside him, restrained by heavy shackles but radiating enormous power, was a figure that made both Goku and Vegeta tense. "Broly," Goku breathed. "That's right," Frieza said cheerfully. "I found your legendary Super Saiyan and brought him along for the festivities. Broly, dear boy, see that planet below us, the one full of Saiyans? Would you like to play with them?" Broly's eyes, glazed and unfocused, suddenly sharpened at the word play. The shackles around him began to crack as his power swelled. "Frieza, you bastard," Vegeta snarled. "You're controlling him." "Merely giving him suggestions," Frieza replied smoothly. "Broly is such a simple creature. Point him at something and he'll destroy it. And right now, I'm pointing him at you. Broly, destroy planet Vegeta and every Saiyan on it." The shackles exploded. Broly's power erupted, his hair flashing green as he transformed into his legendary Super Saiyan form. With a roar that shook the very fabric of space, Broly launched himself at the planet like a living missile. "I've got him," Goku shouted, vanishing with instant transmission and reappearing in Broly's path. The two collided in an explosion of force that created a shockwave visible from the planet's surface. "Kakarot!" Broly roared, some recognition in his eyes despite the conditioning. "Fight!" "I don't want to fight you, Broly," Goku shouted back, blocking a devastating punch. "You're being controlled. Frieza's manipulating you." "Don't care. Fight!" Broly's power continued to rise, his green aura expanding like a supernova. Goku gritted his teeth. He couldn't reason with Broly in this state, which meant he'd have to defeat him. "Fine, but I'm going to snap you out of this." Their battle moved away from the planet, two titans clashing in the void, each blow creating ripples in space-time itself. Meanwhile, Frieza's fleet advanced. The front line of ships opened fire, launching thousands of energy beams at planet Vegeta. The Saiyan army responded in kind, filling space with golden ki blasts. Vegeta shot forward, his Ultra Ego form blazing with purple energy. "The rest of you, focus on the ships. Kakarot and I will handle Frieza." But before Vegeta could reach the flagship, Frieza himself emerged, transforming in a flash of golden light. "I'm afraid you'll have to go through me first, Prince, and I've improved since our last encounter."
Frieza's golden form had evolved, becoming sleeker, more refined. The two clashed in a flurry of blows that moved faster than light, their combat so intense that space itself seemed to crack around them. "You've gotten stronger," Frieza admitted, blocking a devastating kick. "But strength alone won't save you, monkey." On the planet's surface, King Vegeta and Bardock led the defense of the capital city. Ships that broke through the orbital battle were met with volleys of ki blasts from thousands of Saiyans. "For Planet Vegeta!" King Vegeta roared, firing a massive energy wave that consumed 3 frigates. "For our families!" Bardock added, transforming into Super Saiyan and demolishing a landing craft that was attempting to deploy ground troops. Genya fought beside her husband, her own power impressive as she blasted enemy soldiers. "I spent my whole life avoiding combat," she said, firing another blast. "But for my sons, for my family, I'll fight until my last breath." Suddenly, a portal of swirling energy opened in the sky above the capital. From it emerged 2 figures, Piccolo and Gohan, having sensed the battle from Earth and used the Kai's teleportation techniques to arrive. But these weren't the Piccolo and Gohan who had left Earth days ago. Gohan had transformed into Beast Gohan, his hair silver white, his power transcending anything he'd achieved before. Piccolo stood beside him in his orange Piccolo form, skin bright orange, his power rivaling the gods. "Sorry we're late," Gohan called out. "Pan's with Videl at Capsule Corp. We came as soon as we sensed the battle." "Glad you could make it," Bardock replied, blasting another ship. Then he did a double take, looking at Gohan more carefully. "Wait, you're my grandson?" "No time for family reunions," Gohan shouted, launching himself at a massive capital ship. His fist connected with the hull, and the entire vessel crumpled inward before exploding. Piccolo extended his arms across incredible distances, wrapping them around multiple ships and crushing them like tin cans. "Focus on the fighters. I'll handle the larger vessels."
The battle raged across the entire solar system. In one sector, Goku and Broly were locked in combat so fierce that nearby asteroids were vaporized by the sheer pressure of their ki. In another, Vegeta and Golden Frieza exchanged blows that created shockwaves powerful enough to shatter moons. King Vegeta watched the battle from below, his pride warring with the stark realization of how outclassed he truly was. His son, who he remembered as a child, was fighting a tyrant who had destroyed their planet and winning. The low-class Saiyan son was battling the legendary Super Saiyan to a standstill. "The universe has moved beyond us," the king said quietly to himself. "We are relics, brought back to a world we no longer understand." Bardock heard him and landed beside the king. "Maybe so," he said, "but that doesn't mean we're useless. Our sons are strong because of what we gave them. Saiyan blood, Saiyan pride, Saiyan determination. They're just better versions of what we were meant to be." The king nodded slowly. "You're right. We may not be the strongest anymore, but we can still fight. We can still protect our people." "Exactly," agreed Bardock. "Now come on, there are still plenty of enemies that need killing." The two warriors, king and soldier, fought side by side as equals for the first time in their lives. In orbit, Vegeta's ultra ego was proving to be the perfect counter to Frieza's golden form. Every hit Vegeta took made him stronger, and his relentless assault was beginning to wear Frieza down. "Impossible!" Frieza snarled, blood dripping from his mouth. "I am Lord Frieza. I am perfection. You cannot." "Shut up!" Vegeta roared, landing a devastating punch to Frieza's gut that made the tyrant double over. You're nothing but a relic of a dead era. The universe has moved beyond fear of you." Frieza's eyes widened with rage, and then something shifted in his expression. A cruel smile spread across his face. "You think you've won? You think this is my full power?" He began to laugh, the sound chilling and manic. "Oh, Prince Vegeta, I've been holding back. Let me show you what 10 years of training in isolation has given me." A dark aura erupted around Frieza, black as the void between stars. His golden form shifted, turning pitch black with red accents. His power multiplied exponentially, surpassing anything Vegeta had felt before.
"Behold," Frieza declared in his black Frieza form, "true perfection." Before Vegeta could react, Frieza moved with impossible speed. A single punch connected with Vegeta's chest, and the Prince of Saiyans was sent hurtling through space, crashing through 3 of his own ships before tumbling toward the planet's surface. "Vegeta!" Trunks screamed from the ground, watching his father fall. Frieza turned his attention to the ongoing battle between Goku and Broly. With a casual gesture, he fired a precise ki beam that struck Broly in the back. The legendary Super Saiyan's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed unconscious. "Broly!" Goku shouted, catching the falling warrior. He looked up to see Black Frieza approaching, and his blood ran cold. This power, it was beyond anything he'd faced. "Hello, Goku," Frieza said pleasantly. "I do hope you're ready, because unlike our previous encounters, this time I'm going to—" Goku didn't let him finish. Instant transmission put him right in Frieza's face, and he unleashed a point-blank Kamehameha at full power. The blue beam engulfed Frieza completely. When the light faded, Frieza was still floating there, completely unharmed. "Are you quite finished?" Frieza's fist moved faster than Goku could perceive. The impact sent Goku spinning through space, his consciousness flickering. Another hit, and another, and another. Black Frieza was toying with him, breaking him down piece by piece. "Dad!" Gohan screamed from the planet, sensing his father's ki plummeting. Bardock watched in horror as his son, his impossibly strong son who had achieved godhood, was being beaten like a child. "No," he whispered, "not Kakarot, not my boy." With a final devastating strike, Frieza sent Goku crashing toward planet Vegeta. The Saiyan warrior's body carved a crater into the red sand, his Super Saiyan blue form flickering out, his body broken and unconscious. Genie screamed, running toward where her son had fallen. Bardock was already flying, golden aura blazing, rage unlike anything he'd ever felt consuming him. But before he could reach Frieza, Vegeta returned, battered and bloody, but still alive, still fighting. "Get back, Bardock! He's mine!" "You can barely stand!" Bardock shouted. "I don't care!" Vegeta spat blood and transformed back into Ultra Ego. "I am the Prince of all Saiyans. I will not fall to this tyrant." Vegeta and Frieza clashed again, but it was clear Vegeta was outmatched. Frieza was playing with him, enjoying his suffering. On the ground, Goku was dragged to a medical facility by Piccolo and Gohan. They placed him in a healing tank, the green liquid immediately working to repair his extensive injuries. "How bad is it?" King Vegeta asked, approaching the tank. "Bad," Piccolo replied grimly. "He's alive, but it'll take time for him to recover. Time we may not have." Through the tank's glass, they could see Goku's unconscious face, peaceful despite the battle raging above. In space, Vegeta was reaching his limit. Even Ultra Ego's ability to get stronger from damage had its limits, and Frieza's power was simply too overwhelming. A vicious kick sent Vegeta spinning, and Frieza caught him by the throat. "Any last words, Prince?" Frieza asked mockingly. "Yes," Vegeta gasped.
You've already lost. You just don't know it yet. Oh, and why is that? Because you made one crucial mistake, Vegeta said, actually smiling through the pain. You came to our home, you threatened our families, and you hurt Kakarot. You've given every Saiyan here something to fight for. As if to punctuate his words, Bardock slammed into Frieza from behind, transforming further in his rage. His golden aura exploded with electrical energy. He'd achieved Super Saiyan 2. That's my son you hurt, Bardock roared, unleashing a barrage of attacks on Frieza. And I don't care if you're a god or a devil, you're going to pay. Frieza laughed and swatted Bardock aside, but then Jinne was there, also transformed, her attacks precise and calculated. Then King Vegeta arrived, his own golden aura blazing, having finally achieved Super Saiyan through sheer determination to protect his people. More and more Saiyans joined the assault. Raditz, Nappa, who had been resurrected with the others, dozens of elite warriors, all transformed, all fighting together. They couldn't match Frieza individually, but together they were buying time.
On the ground, Gohan stood beside the healing tank, his fists clenched. "Come on, Dad, wake up! We need you!" Suddenly, Goku's eyes opened inside the tank. The green liquid began to bubble violently as his power surged. The glass cracked, then shattered, and Goku stepped out, his body fully healed, his power restored, and somehow even greater than before. "How are you feeling?" Piccolo asked. Goku stretched, rolled his shoulders, and smiled. Ready for round 2. But first, he placed 2 fingers on his forehead, locking on to Bardock's ki. "I'm gonna need help." He vanished and reappeared in space beside his father. "Tag out, Dad. You've done great." "Kakarot!" Bardock gasped in relief. "You're okay!" "More than okay," Goku replied. His aura shifted, turning silver as he accessed true Ultra Instinct. "Now let me show Frieza what happens when you mess with my family." Goku moved like liquid light, flowing around Frieza's attacks with impossible grace. Each of Goku's strikes landed with devastating precision, targeting weak points, creating openings, building damage. Frieza snarled in frustration. "You should be dead. How are you standing?" "Because I have something you'll never understand," Goku replied calmly, his silver aura blazing. "I have people I love, people I protect, and they give me strength you can never achieve alone." But even Ultra Instinct wasn't enough. Frieza's black form was simply too powerful, too refined. For every hit Goku landed, Frieza landed too. The battle was turning against him again. Then Vegeta appeared beside him, Ultra Ego fully powered up. Despite his injuries, despite his exhaustion, the prince stood ready. "Kakarot," Vegeta said, "I have an idea, but you're going to hate it." "What is it?" Goku asked, dodging another of Frieza's attacks. "The fusion dance," Vegeta replied, his pride clearly aching at the suggestion. "It's the only way we can match his power." Goku's eyes widened. They'd fused before, creating Gogeta, but always as a last resort. The fact that Vegeta was suggesting it now showed how desperate their situation was. "You're right," Goku said. "I hate it. Let's do it anyway." The 2 warriors pulled back from Frieza, landing on the surface of one of planet Vegeta's moons. The entire Saiyan army watched in confusion as the 2 strongest warriors began performing a synchronized dance. "What are they doing?" King Vegeta asked. "Something incredible," Gohan replied, sensing what was about to happen. "Everyone, get ready. The real battle is about to begin." Fu Shun Ha! Goku and Vegeta's fingers touched, and a blinding light consumed them both. When it faded, a single warrior stood where 2 had been. His hair was a unique blend of Goku and Vegeta's styles, shimmering between silver and purple as both Ultra Instinct and Ultra Ego fought for dominance within the fusion, ultimately merging into something new.
I am neither Goku nor Vegeta, the warrior declared, his voice carrying both men's tones. I am Gogeta, and I'm going to end this. Frieza's confident smirk faltered for the first time. What is this power? Gogeta's speed was beyond comprehension. He appeared in front of Frieza and delivered a punch that sent the tyrant hurtling through space, through the moon they'd been standing on, and into the debris field of broken ships beyond. Impossible, Frieza screamed, trying to recover. But Gogeta was already there, his attacks coming from every direction at once. The fusion of Ultra Instinct and Ultra Ego created a fighting style that was both perfectly precise and devastatingly powerful. Gogeta moved with Ultra Instinct's grace while hitting with Ultra Ego's destructive force, and he got stronger with every blow Frieza managed to land. You wanted to destroy the Saiyans? Goku asked, his voice eerily calm as he pummeled Frieza. You wanted to end our race for good? Let me tell you something about Saiyans, Frieza. We don't just survive, we thrive, we grow, we protect each other, and we never, ever give up. Frieza tried to fire his supernova attack, the same technique he'd used to destroy planet Vegeta the first time. The massive red and black energy sphere grew above him, large enough to consume the entire planet.
I'll destroy it all, Frieza shrieked madly. Everything. I'll erase every last Saiyan from existence. But Gogeta raised both hands, and energy from every Saiyan below flowed up to him. Golden, blue, silver, purple, every form of Super Saiyan energy combined. Bardock, Genie, King Vegeta, Raditz, Nappa, Gohan, Piccolo, Broly, who had regained consciousness, Trunks, Goten, every warrior on the planet, they all gave their energy willingly. Soul Punisher! Gogeta shouted, unleashing a rainbow-colored sphere of energy. The Soul Punisher met Frieza's supernova in the void between planets. For a moment, they seemed evenly matched. Then the Soul Punisher, powered by the combined will of the entire Saiyan race and Earth's defenders, began to push forward. No! Frieza screamed. I am Lord Frieza! I am perfection! I cannot lose to monkeys! You're not losing to monkeys, Gogeta said quietly. You're losing to family. The Soul Punisher consumed the supernova and engulfed Frieza completely. The tyrant's screams echoed across space as the rainbow energy purified every evil molecule of his being, breaking him down to his component atoms and scattering them across the cosmos. When the light faded, Frieza was gone. Truly, completely gone. The fusion wore off, and Goku and Vegeta appeared separately, both dropping to their base forms, utterly exhausted. They floated in space for a moment, barely conscious, before Bardock and King Vegeta flew up to catch them. You did it, Bardock whispered, catching Goku. My son, you actually did it. We did it, Dad, Goku corrected weakly. All of us together. On the planet's surface, millions of Saiyans erupted in cheers. The threat was over. Frieza, the tyrant who had haunted their race for generations, was finally, permanently defeated. But victory had come at a cost. The orbital battle had left thousands of Saiyans injured. Several cities had been damaged by falling debris from destroyed ships. The celebration was tempered by the sobering reality of the price they'd paid. In the royal palace, now converted to a medical center, Goku and Vegeta lay in healing tanks, side by side, recovering from the fusion strain. Their families gathered around them. Bulma stood with her hand pressed against Vegeta's tank, tears streaming down her face. You idiot, she whispered. You reckless, prideful idiot. But you did it. You saved everyone. Chi-Chi stood at Goku's tank, equally emotional. You always push yourself too far, but I'm so proud of you. Little Pan, held by Videl, reached out toward the tanks, sensing her grandfather's ki even through the healing liquid. The Dragon Balls lay at the center of the palace, gray and inert. They would remain so for a year, having granted their wish. King Vegeta stood before them, contemplating everything that had happened. "These orbs brought us back," he said to Bardock, who stood beside him. "They gave us a second chance. We can't waste it." "Agreed," Bardock replied. "The old ways led to our destruction. We served a tyrant out of fear and pride, and it got us killed. We need to be better." "Your son showed us how," the king said. "Kakarot and my son both. They found strength not through cruelty or conquest, but through bonds, through family and friendship." Gohan approached them, still in his base form, but radiating quiet power. "If I may speak freely," he said respectfully, "Earth has thrived because we don't just rely on the strongest warrior. We build societies, cultures, families. We have scientists like my mother-in-law, Bulma, martial artists like my master, Piccolo. Ordinary people living extraordinary lives. Strength is important, but it's not everything." King Vegeta listened, really listened. "You're suggesting we become more than just warriors. I'm suggesting you become complete. Keep your warrior traditions, they're part of who you are, but add to them. Create art, science, philosophy. Raise your children with love as well as strength. That's what made Earth worth protecting. That's what could make Planet Vegeta truly great." 3 days later, the healing tanks opened. Goku and Vegeta stepped out, fully recovered, to the cheers of their families. But there was no time for rest. King Vegeta had called for a ceremony in the Grand Plaza, and the entire population of Planet Vegeta was gathering. The plaza was massive, capable of holding hundreds of thousands of Saiyans. At its center stood a raised platform with the ancient throne of the Saiyan kings. King Vegeta stood beside it in his full royal armor, and beside him stood Vegeta, looking uncomfortable in formal clothing. "People of Planet Vegeta," the king's voice boomed across the plaza, amplified by technology Bulma had provided. "We have been given a second chance at life, brought back from oblivion by the selfless act of Kakarot, son of Bardock. We have survived an attack by the tyrant Frieza, protected by warriors who transcend anything our old empire could have imagined." The crowd listened in absolute silence, hanging on every word. "I am a king of the old ways," he continued, "a ruler of an empire built on conquest and servitude. But those ways died with our planet the first time. What Kakarot and my son have shown us is that there is a better path, a stronger path. Not the strength to conquer, but the strength to protect. Not the power to destroy, but the power to preserve." He turned to Vegeta, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "My son has achieved godhood. He has married an alien and created a family. He has learned to fight not for glory or pride alone, but for those he loves. He represents everything our race can become if we choose to evolve." King Vegeta removed his crown, an ancient circlet of red gold that had been worn by Saiyan kings for millennia. He held it before the crowd, then turned to Vegeta. "I hereby abdicate my throne," King Vegeta declared, "and I name my son Prince Vegeta as the new king of all Saiyans." The crowd erupted. Some cheered, some looked confused. A few hardliners looked angry, but the king's word was law, and the decision was made. "No," Vegeta said quietly. The plaza fell silent. Everyone stared at the prince. "What?" his father asked, genuinely shocked. Vegeta looked at the crowd, then at his father, then at the assembled masses. "I appreciate the honor, father, but I'm not the king these people need. I've spent most of my life on Earth. My home is there now, with Bulma and Trunks. I'll help guide our people, I'll teach them, I'll protect them, but I can't rule them." "Then who?" Vegeta interrupted. "You, but not as you were. Rule as you should have ruled, with wisdom, with consideration for all Saiyans, not just the elite. Learn from your mistakes. Grow as I've grown. Can you do that, Father?"
King Vegeta stood in shock for a moment. Then slowly a smile crossed his face. "You truly have surpassed me, my son, not just in power, but in wisdom." He placed the crown back on his own head. "Very well. I will remain king, but I will rule differently. I will build a kingdom worthy of the warriors who saved us." The crowd erupted in genuine cheers this time. A king who had learned from his failures was better than a king who had never known failure at all. Later that evening, as 3 moons rose over planet Vegeta, Goku sat with his parents on the balcony of their home. The city below was alive with celebration, but up here it was quiet. "You're going back to Earth, aren't you?" Bardock asked. Goku nodded. "Yeah, Chi-Chi and Pan are there. It's my home now, but I'll visit. We're family after all." Jean hugged her son tightly. "I missed so much of your life. I'll never get those years back." "No," Goku agreed, returning the hug. "But we have now, and we have the future. That's more than most people get." "Your mother and I want to see Earth," Bardock said gruffly, "if you'll have us." "Are you kidding?" Goku grinned. "Chi-Chi will love meeting you. Well, after she yells at me for getting hurt again, but then she'll love meeting you." "I want to meet this woman who captured the heart of the warrior who defeated Frieza," Jean said with a warm smile. Vegeta appeared on the balcony, using his ability to fly. "Kakarot, can we talk?" Goku stood and walked with Vegeta to the edge of the balcony, out of earshot. They stood in silence for a moment, looking at the planet below. "Thank you," Vegeta said quietly. "For what?" "For bringing them back. All of them. My father, your parents, our entire race. You didn't have to do that. You could have used that wish for anything." "You would have done the same," Goku replied. "No," Vegeta said honestly. "I wouldn't have. A year ago, maybe even a month ago, I would have thought it was foolish, that the past should stay in the past. But you were right. Everyone deserves a second chance." They stood together, 2 rivals who had become brothers, watching their homeworld celebrate its rebirth. "We're going to need to keep training," Vegeta said. "Frieza is gone, but there will be other threats. There always are." "I know," Goku agreed, "but now we have a whole planet of Saiyans who can help. Think about it, Vegeta. An entire race of Super Saiyans, all protecting the universe instead of conquering it." "A nice dream," Vegeta admitted. "Let's see if we can make it reality." Weeks passed. Planet Vegeta settled into a new rhythm. Saiyan children, including Goten and Trunks during their visits, played in streets rebuilt by combined Saiyan and Earth technology. Scientists from both planets worked together, sharing knowledge. Bulma's defense systems surrounded the planet, ensuring early warning against future threats. Broly, freed from Frieza's control, found purpose as the planet's guardian. His enormous power was channeled into protection rather than destruction, and Goku visited regularly to train with him, helping him master his legendary form. Tarbell returned from exile, reuniting with his father and brother in an emotional ceremony. Despite his gentle nature, he was welcomed home, proof that the new Saiyan society valued more than just raw power. Vegeta founded the new Saiyan Academy, a training facility that taught not just combat, but honor, strategy, and the importance of fighting for something beyond yourself. Bardock became one of its chief instructors, teaching the next generation about the mistakes of the past and the possibilities of the future. On Earth, in a cozy house in the mountains, Goku sat at his dinner table surrounded by family. Chi-Chi, Gohan, Videl, Little Pan, Goten, and now Bardock and Genya, who had decided to split their time between worlds. They shared a meal, sharing stories and laughter. "More rice, Bardock?" Chi-Chi offered, and the gruff warrior nodded sheepishly, impressed by the Earthwoman's cooking. "So," Gohan said to his grandfather, "tell me more about my dad when he was little. Was he always so reckless?"
"Kakarot?" Bardock snorted. "He was a crybaby as an infant. Weak, too. That's why I sent him to Earth. I thought it would be a safe, easy mission for a low-level warrior.
Best decision you ever made, Goku said with a grin.
Indeed, Bardock agreed, his expression softening as he looked at his son.
The best decision of my life.
Far away, in the palace on planet Vegeta, King Vegeta looked at a holographic image of his son training with Kakarot on Earth. The two warriors pushed each other to greater heights, neither one willing to be surpassed, yet both clearly enjoying the rivalry.
They're so much stronger than we ever were, the king said to his advisor.
Perhaps, the advisor replied, but they had something we didn't, Your Majesty. They had each other. They had purpose beyond power. They had love. The king nodded slowly.
Then that's what we'll build here.
Not an empire of conquest, but a civilization of strength tempered with compassion. That will be our legacy. That will be our redemption. In the sky above planet Vegeta, the Dragon Balls finally regained their color, ready to grant another wish in the distant future. But for now, they rested, their work complete. Across the universe, Purist, the Destroyer, watched the flourishing Saiyan homeworld from his distant planet. Whis stood beside him, a knowing smile on his face.
Are you pleased with this outcome, Lord Beerus? Whis asked.
Beerus yawned and stretched, his tail swishing lazily.
I suppose. The Saiyans were always an interesting race. Having them back adds some flavor to Universe 7. Plus, it means more delicious Earth food when we visit.
You've grown fond of them, Whis observed. Nonsense, Beerus huffed. I simply appreciate having strong warriors to keep things interesting, that's all.
Of course, my lord, Whis replied, his smile widening. They both knew the truth. The god of destruction had become attached to the Saiyans and their endless potential for growth. Back on planet Vegeta, as the sun set and the moons rose, Saiyans gathered in the great plaza for an evening ceremony. Not a ceremony of war or conquest, but one of remembrance. They honored those who had fought, those who had fallen, and those who had brought them all back. And in the center of it all, broadcast on a massive holographic screen, were images of Goku and Vegeta, the low-class warrior and the prince, the destroyer and the protector, the rival and the friend. Together they had saved the Saiyan race. Together they had defeated an ancient evil. Together they had proven that even the darkest past could be redeemed. The legacy of the Dragon Balls would continue. The legacy of the Saiyans would flourish, and across the peaceful heavens, scattered stars shone brighter, united by the bonds of family, friendship, and the endless potential of warriors who fought not for glory, but for love. The story of planet Vegeta's resurrection had come to an end, but the story of its future, bright, hopeful, and filled with possibility, was only just beginning.
Future. Time unknown. The red sky of planet Vegeta was burning, not with the crimson of its twin suns, not with the amber haze of a dust storm rolling across its iron plains. It was burning the way things burn when they are being unmade. A fire that ate light itself, that swallowed the stars above the capital and left only a howling, churning darkness where the heavens had been. And in the center of that darkness, something stood. It was Saiyan-shaped. It walked upright. It breathed. But the aura that surrounded it was wrong, ancient in a way that predated the Saiyan race itself, primal in a way that reached back before language, before thought, before the first warrior ever raised a fist and called it glory. The figure's hair was white, not the silver of ultra instinct, not the icy blue of divine ki, but the white of bone stripped clean by centuries of wind. Its eyes were gold, but not the gold of a Super Saiyan's awakening. This gold was flat, still, like the eyes of something that had stopped feeling anything at all. At its feet, the capital of planet Vegeta was rubble. The great towers Bulma had helped rebuild, the white spires that caught the dawn like fingers reaching for the sky, were collapsed into dust. The training arenas where Bardock had taught the next generation were craters. The grand plaza where King Vegeta had made his vow of reformation was an ocean of broken stone. The holographic screens shattered, the celebration banners reduced to ash.
and scattered across that rubble, unmoving, with the bodies of Saiyans, thousands of them. The figure walked slowly through the carnage, its footsteps silent despite the debris beneath its feet. It stopped at the center of the plaza. It looked up at the burning sky, and then it spoke, not loudly, not with rage, but with the quiet certainty of something inevitable. This is what purity looks like. A hand grabbed the vision by the throat and ripped it away. Goku jolted upright on the sleeping mat, gasping, his hand slamming flat against the floor to stop himself from toppling. The room around him was dark, the modest home his parents had built in the lower district of the capital, simple and clean, smelling of Jin's cooking and the mineral sharpness of planet Vegeta's night air. He sat there in the silence, breathing. His heart was hammering. He pressed a hand against his chest, feeling it, that specific wrongness, the sensation he'd learned over decades of battle to never ignore. The feeling that something had just shifted in the universe. A weight had been placed on a scale somewhere, and the balance had tilted. He'd felt it before Raditz arrived on Earth, before the Saiyans attacked Namek, before Cell absorbed 17, before Majin Buu emerged from his shell. He felt it now. He stood slowly, walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. The capital spread out below him in the deep blue of planet Vegeta's night. New construction alongside ancient stone, the lights of 10,000 homes burning soft and warm. Families, children, warriors sleeping beside their loved ones, dreaming of training, of meals, of tomorrow. This is what purity looks like. The voice in the vision hadn't been a monster's voice. It hadn't been desperate or hateful. It had been certain. That was what frightened him most. 3 months after the battle with Frieza, the new Saiyan Academy stood on the eastern edge of the capital, built on the site of what had once been an execution ground during the old Empire's rule. Vegeta had chosen the location deliberately, a deliberate act of symbolic overriding, a declaration that the ground which had once swallowed the innocent would now produce something better. It was not universally appreciated. Bardock stood at the top of the Academy's observation tower in the gray hour before the first sun crested the horizon, watching the training yards below. Hundreds of young Saiyans moved through their drills, combinations, key control exercises, endurance runs across the packed red earth. Their instructors were a mix of warriors who had survived the old empire and those who had been resurrected with planet Vegeta itself, all of them trying to adapt to a curriculum that the old empire had never bothered to teach. Why they were fighting. Bardock watched a pair of young warriors run their partner drills. They were good, quick, instinctive, with the raw violence that came naturally to their blood. But they were listening to their instructor explain the concept of restraint, of matching force to necessity, of understanding the difference between defeating an enemy and erasing them. And he could see from 50 meters away the barely contained contempt on their faces. He recognized that contempt. He'd worn it himself for most of his life. The sound of boots on the staircase behind him pulled his attention. He didn't need to turn. He'd known that particular footstep since before the resurrection, since lives and deaths ago, since they'd bled beside each other in a dozen forgotten wars on a dozen forgotten planets. Sargo, Bardock said. The man who stepped up beside him was built like a war monument, broad and solid, with the kind of face that didn't move much because it didn't need to. Every scar on it told a story, and the stories were all the same story. His armor was old style, pre-resurrection, the kind the Frieza Force had issued to elite Saiyan squads. He hadn't replaced it with anything new. Bardock had noticed that about several of the older resurrected warriors. They kept the old armor, kept the old insignia. A small thing. Perhaps nothing. Perhaps everything. You see it, don't you? Sargo said. Not a question. I see young warriors being trained, Bardock replied. You see young warriors being softened, Sargo's voice was without heat. That was the most disturbing thing about him. He was never hot with this. He was cold and steady, as though he'd arrived at his conclusions through long, patient reasoning and now stood on the far side of them, done with emotion, finished with doubt. The compassion curriculum, the why we fight sessions, the Earthwoman's defense satellites. He said the last as though it tasted like something rotten. I've been watching this for 3 months, Bardock, and it's getting worse. It's getting better. That's what you're actually afraid of. Sargo finally turned to look at him. The two men stood at the same height, but the distance between them in that moment felt like a canyon. Kakarot cried at a family dinner. I had 3 warriors tell me that with their own eyes. The son of Bardock, a man who has beaten gods, wept at a table. His jaw tightened just slightly, the closest he ever came to visible anger. That is what Earth did to him. That is what the prince's wife is doing to this world. And our king, sat in council yesterday and asked the Earth scientist's opinion on treaty policy, as though she were a general, as though being clever were the same as being strong.
Bardock said nothing for a long moment. Below, the training continued. The instructor was now demonstrating a technique, elegant, economical, designed to subdue rather than destroy. The young warriors copied it reluctantly, their bodies carrying the motion while their instincts protested.
What do you want, Sargo?
I want what every Saiyan here should want, Sargo said. I want our race to remember what it is before it forgets completely. He descended the stairs and was gone before the first sun broke the horizon. The meeting happened in a warehouse in the manufacturing district in the pre-dawn dark when the night shift had ended and the day shift hadn't yet arrived. No formal announcement, no written messages, just the old Saiyan communication method. A specific key signature pulsed twice in a specific pattern recognized by those who knew to listen for it. 47 warriors showed up. They were a cross-section of the resurrected Old Guard, elite soldiers, veteran squad leaders, men and women who had been among the finest warriors the old empire had produced. They sat or stood in silence as Sargo walked to the center of the space and faced them. He didn't give a speech, that wasn't his way. He laid out facts, one after another, the way a soldier lays out weapons before a mission, methodically, without dramatics, letting the weight of each item speak for itself. The Academy curriculum has been revised 3 times in 3 months. Each revision reduces combat hours and increases what they're calling philosophical education. 43% of the training roster is now under Earth-trained supervision. The King has accepted a technology integration agreement with Capsule Corporation that gives an Earth civilian direct access to our defense grid. The Prince has not lived on this planet for more than 6 consecutive days since the resurrection. He goes back to Earth. He goes back to his wife. He goes back to his family. He let that land. Meanwhile, the Saiyan warriors who fought and died under his father, who served this empire for generations, who earned their rank through blood and battle, who are supposed to be the backbone of whatever this new civilization becomes, are being asked to take lessons from teenagers about the philosophy of conflict. A woman in the back spoke. Lysa, a combat specialist, her record impeccable under the old regime. What are you proposing?
Sargo met her eyes. Nothing yet. I'm proposing that you think, that you notice what's happening, that you ask yourselves, when the Saiyans of planet Vegeta are teaching their children to hesitate before striking, and the Saiyans of Universe 6 are training without restraint, and whatever other threat is building in the dark out there looks at us and measures us, what will they see? Silence. They'll see a warrior race that learned to set the table nicely, Sargo said, and they'll come for us. He walked out. He didn't wait for a response. He never did. The 47 warriors sat in the dark warehouse for a long time after he left. Capsule Corp's satellite lab,
planet Vegeta orbit. Bulma didn't sleep much anymore. This wasn't unusual for her. It hadn't been unusual since she was 16 and first built a dragon radar in her bedroom at 4 in the morning. But the particular quality of her sleeplessness here, aboard the orbital station she'd built in planet Vegeta's upper atmosphere, was new. It had the texture of a frequency she couldn't quite tune out, a low, persistent hum of wrongness just at the edge of perception. She was reviewing security logs when the anomaly appeared. It was subtle, almost surgical in its subtlety. Someone had accessed a read-only partition of the planetary defense grid sensor relay. Not hacked it, not breached it, just looked at it. The access timestamp was at 0342 planetary time. The authentication used was a legitimate Saiyan military clearance code, one of the hundreds she'd issued to King Vegeta's designated military liaisons during the integration process. But the code was registered to a soldier who, according to the access logs, had been in the Eastern Training Facility at 0342 under direct observation of 2 instructors. She cross-referenced. She ran the check 3 times because she didn't like what it was telling her. Someone had cloned a legitimate authentication signature and used it to query the defense grid's sensor blind spots. Not the active systems, not the weapons platforms or the shield generators, just the blind spots, the gaps. She sat back in her chair and stared at the ceiling of her orbital lab for a very long time. Then she picked up the communicator and called Vegeta. He answered on the second pulse, which meant he hadn't been sleeping either. "There's something you need to see," she said. Sargo's compound, Northern Range, 6 weeks after the meeting. His name, before the resurrection, had been recorded in the Imperial Military Registry as General Sargo of the 7th Legion, one of 12 Saiyan generals who had served under King Vegeta's direct command. His performance record was exceptional. His loyalty record was impeachable. His kill count across 40 years of Imperial service was in the upper percentile of every active warrior in the old Empire. What the records didn't capture was the way he thought. Sargo had always thought in structures, systems, cause and effect chains that he could trace forward and backward with the same patience a mathematician applies to a proof. He had no hatred for humans, not personally. He had no particular grievance with Goku or Vegeta or even Bulma. His contempt for what they represented was not personal, it was architectural. He understood, better than most, that civilizations are defined by their organizing principle. The organizing principle of the old Saiyan Empire had been strength, raw, absolute, unambiguous. You were strong or you were nothing. You grew stronger or you fell behind. The system was brutal, but it was coherent. It produced warriors of extraordinary capability because it applied selection pressure without mercy. The new organizing principle, as he understood it, was something like growth through connection, strength tempered by love, power guided by compassion, the Goku model. And Sargo's architectural mind saw the problem immediately. A system built on connection creates dependencies. Dependencies create vulnerabilities. A warrior who fights for his family will hesitate if his family is threatened. A warrior who cares about civilian casualties will pull a strike that should land. A warrior trained to value restraint will, in the critical nanosecond that decides every battle, pause. That pause, Sargo believed, was where civilizations died. He hadn't planned to move this quickly. He'd expected years of gradual re-education, slow erosion, the kind of cultural drift that could be allowed to proceed without confrontation. But the defense grid vulnerability Bulma had discovered, and the speed with which Vegeta had responded to it, had changed his timeline. They knew someone was watching. They didn't yet know who, or why, or how organized it was. He had a window, not a large one. In the compound's central training hall, a converted military installation in the northern mountain range, far from the capital's sensor networks, Sargo stood before the 212 warriors who had, over 6 weeks, been quietly gathered. They were not the angry ones. That was the thing people would misunderstand about this when they eventually understood it at all. The warriors in this room were not the hotheads, the bitter ones, the grievance collectors who resented the new order because it had stripped them of privilege. Those types were useless, emotional, unpredictable, prone to acting before the moment was right. These warriors were the disciplined ones, the true believers, the ones who had looked at the new planet Vegeta with clear eyes and reached the same conclusion Sargo had reached through clear thought. This road ends in the death of everything they were. "You have all made a choice," Sargo said. His voice was even, unhurried, the voice of a man delivering a briefing rather than an ultimatum. "You have made a choice not against our people, a choice for them, against what is being done to them." He moved through the room slowly, making eye contact as he passed, not for theater, but because he wanted them each to feel seen, acknowledged. These were not soldiers being commanded, they were warriors who had chosen. "The prince will not negotiate. He has decided what the Saiyan people should become, and he is implementing that decision with the certainty of a man who believes he has already won the argument." He paused. And perhaps he has. Perhaps in a debate, in a council chamber, with words, he wins. "We are not going to have a debate." He stopped at the center of the room. "We are going to demonstrate, simply and clearly to every Saiyan on this planet, what we lose if we walk the path they're setting. We are going to remind them who they are, what their blood means, what the warrior's way actually requires." He looked at the woman standing to his right, tall, composed, her dark hair pulled back, her armor the old style but immaculate. Lieutenant Veska, former intelligence officer of the 3rd Legion, the sharpest strategic mind he had. "Begin the Phase 1 operations," he said.
Planet Vegeta, capital, the King's Council Chamber. Vegeta learned about the compound 3 days after Bulma found the sensor breach. He didn't learn about it from the intelligence apparatus he'd helped King Vegeta build. He didn't learn about it from the planetary defense grid. He learned about it because Bardock came and told him. The two men sat in the council chamber with no one else present, not the king, not Gohan or Piccolo who were visiting from Earth, not even Kakarot. Just Vegeta and Bardock, across a stone table in the gray afternoon light. Bardock had aged. Not physically, the resurrection had returned him exactly as he was, and 40-something years of Saiyan Prime showed no lines. But there was a weight behind his eyes now that hadn't been there in the early days after the resurrection. The weight of a man watching something he helped build begin to crack. "Sargo had 47 at the first meeting," Bardock said. "He has over 200 now. These are serious warriors, Vegeta. Not malcontents, not the ones who've been loud about hating the academy curriculum. The quiet ones, the ones who've been doing exactly what they were told while planning something else entirely." Vegeta's face showed nothing. He'd long ago mastered the art of receiving bad news without reaction, or rather, he'd learned to move the reaction inward, to a private space where he could hold it like a hot coal and feel it without letting it make his decisions for him. "What does he want?" Vegeta asked. "He hasn't stated demands. He won't. That's not how he operates." Bardock's jaw worked. "I served under him for 6 years before the destruction. He doesn't issue ultimatums. He creates situations. He puts things in motion that force you to respond, and then he uses your response." "What situations is he creating?" Bardock met his eyes. "That's what I don't know yet, and that's why I'm here. Because whatever it is, it'll be surgical. It'll be designed to look like a demonstration of principle, not an act of rebellion. He'll make it so that if you respond with force, you look like the aggressor, and if you don't respond, you look weak." The afternoon light shifted through the chamber's high windows, drawing long shadows across the stone floor. Vegeta stared at the table surface and thought about his father, who was right now in a council meeting on the other side of the palace, trying to learn how to be a different kind of king. He thought about Bulma in her orbital lab, watching the gaps in a defense grid that had gaps because no one anticipated the threat would come from inside. He thought about Trunks, who was on Earth at school, learning history in a classroom, living the future Vegeta had fought to make possible.
He thought about what Sargo was actually saying. Not the words, the argument, the clean, internally consistent case that the old way was better, that what Goku had brought from Earth was a poison dressed as medicine. And the worst of it, the part that Vegeta would never say aloud to anyone, not even Kakarot, was that he understood the argument. That some part of him, the deep Saiyan substrate that no amount of Earth living had fully dissolved, heard Sargo's logic and recognized it. The blood spoke. He could feel it speaking. That was what made Sargo dangerous. Not his army, his argument. "Find out what he's planning," Vegeta said finally. "Don't engage him. Don't give him a confrontation he can use. Just find out." Bardock nodded. He stood, then he stopped. "He was one of my closest allies, before. He pulled me out of a bad situation on planet Sheth. I owe him my life, technically." He paused. "I want you to know that I know what I'm doing. I'm not confused about this, but it's not simple." Vegeta looked at him. "No," he said quietly, "it isn't." Eastern Plains, 8 days later. The attack on the resettlement convoy came at dawn. 28 transport vehicles moving supplies from a Capsule Corp delivery point to 3 resettlement communities in the Eastern Plains, families mostly, who had been resurrected to find their homes in the capital's old quarter had been damaged in the battle with Frieza's fleet and were being temporarily relocated while reconstruction finished. It was a routine operation, low security. The convoy had 2 escort warriors, standard for a civilian supply run. The attack lasted 11 seconds. Not a single supply vehicle was destroyed. Not a single civilian was hurt. Every person aboard every transport was unharmed, treated without aggression. The convoy stopped with precision key barriers and then held in place while 4 masked warriors methodically removed every piece of Capsule Corp technology from the cargo manifest. Communication arrays, medical devices, agricultural sensors, atmospheric processors, all Earth-made, all gone. The 4 warriors vanished before the escort could recover from their initial suppression, a suppression achieved not through injury, but through a key binding technique, a way of temporarily overwhelming an opponent's energy without causing damage. When the escorts regained control of their key, they found a single item left behind in place of the stolen cargo. An old Imperial flag, the pre-Frieza Saiyan Royal Standard, folded precisely and placed on the lead vehicle's hood. No message, no demands, just the flag. When Vegeta arrived at the Eastern Plains 3 hours later, the convoy drivers were still shaken. The escorts, both competent, both humiliated, gave their reports with the clipped precision of warriors trying to process an experience that didn't fit their threat models. They'd been expecting danger, if any, from outside. The people who had stopped them had felt, in key signature, like Saiyan military, like the people doing the defending. Vegeta stood beside the lead transport and looked at the folded flag. He didn't touch it. "No injuries," one of the escorts said, still confused about whether this was a comfort or an insult. They specifically avoided injuring anyone. The key binding technique, that's not something you use if you want to hurt people. It's surgical. It takes discipline. "I know what it takes," Vegeta said. He looked at the flag, at the flag's deliberate placement, at the message being sent without a single word. We could have hurt them. We chose not to, this time. And the second message woven beneath the first. Your Earth technology doesn't belong here. We're going to keep removing it. Sargo had made his move. Vegeta had to respond, and every response available to him had been carefully accounted for. Move with force, prove the point about oppression. Do nothing, prove the point about weakness. Negotiate, legitimate an illegitimate act. He turned to the aide standing behind him. "I want every resettlement route suspended until we can add proper security. Full escort, not 2 warriors, 10 minimum. That'll delay the resettlement by..." "I know what it delays." He looked at the flag one last time, then looked away. "Suspend the routes." He flew back to the capital alone. and the weight of what was coming settled around his shoulders like armor he hadn't asked for. Goku's parents' home, Capital Lower District, that evening. Goku sat across from Bardock in the small kitchen of his parents' home, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't know what to say. That was unusual for him. Not that he was particularly eloquent under normal circumstances. He'd been told often enough that his approach to complex situations was basically hit it until it stops being a problem, then eat something. But he usually felt the path forward. He usually felt the direction in which action should move, even if the specifics were unclear. Right now, he felt nothing but the blankness of a situation that was genuinely new. "He's not wrong," Goku said finally. Bardock, who had been staring into his tea, looked up. "Not about everything," Goku continued. "His argument about vulnerability, about connection creating targets, that's not a stupid argument. I've thought about it myself." He turned the cup in his hands. "When Gohan first started caring about Videl, I noticed something. He started pulling punches during training, not because he'd gotten weaker, because he was always at the back of his mind thinking about her, about what would happen to her if he wasn't around." He paused. "That's a vulnerability. Sargo's right about that." "Then how?" "But it's also what made him unlock beast form," Goku said. "Because when Gohan finally pushed past the hesitation, when he stopped trying to manage the fear and just let himself feel it completely, the power that came out of that love was beyond anything he'd accessed through pure technique." He set the cup down. "Sargo sees the liability but not the asset. He's got half the equation, and because he's smart, half the equation is convincing." Bardock was quiet for a moment. "He's going to move again, bigger this time. The convoy was a message. The next thing will be a demonstration," Goku said softly. "What?" "He told them he was going to demonstrate what they lose by going soft. The convoy was step one, showing they could move freely within our blind spots, showing the Earth tech isn't untouchable." He looked up. "Step two will be a fight, a public one of his warriors against one of ours. He's going to make one of his people fight one of our people and show that the old training produces something superior to the new training." Bardock stared at him. "How do you know that?" Goku half smiled, though there was nothing happy about it. "Because that's what I'd do if I was trying to show people that a different way of fighting was better. The simplest thing in the world is to have a fight." Bardock set his hands flat on the table. "Kakarot, if that's what he's planning, we can't let it happen. A public fight, even if our warrior wins, legitimizes his position. It says the question of which training method is superior is an open one. It says the ideology behind the method is debatable." "Yes," Goku said. "So we need to stop it before it happens." "We can't," Goku said, "not without looking like exactly what he says we are, an authority that suppresses challenge instead of meeting it." He stood up, walked to the window. The capital below was lit for the evening, warm, alive, ordinary. "He's thought about this longer than we have, Dad. He's been thinking about it since before the first meeting. Every move we make, he's accounted for." He pressed his forehead lightly against the window's frame. "We need to make a move he hasn't accounted for." "What move is that?" Goku was quiet for a long time, watching the city, feeling the key signatures of thousands of Saiyans going about their evenings, eating, training, sleeping, raising their children in a world that was 57 days younger than anyone knew how to be in. It was called a traditional tournament. It had been announced through the old military communication channels, the same key pulse system that had gathered Sargo's people in the warehouse, now repurposed openly, publicly, without any pretense of secrecy. A test of Saiyan excellence, old methods versus new, open to all registered warriors, tournament format. First bracket begins at dawn. King Vegeta, when he heard, called his council into emergency session. The debate lasted 4 hours and accomplished nothing. Half the council wanted to ban the tournament, the other half pointed out that banning a combat competition on a warrior planet was precisely the kind of thing that would prove Sargo's point. The king himself said very little,
which Vegeta recognized as his father being genuinely uncertain for the first time in his post-resurrection life.
Vegeta made the decision himself. Not as king, he refused that, but as the de facto military authority, and because someone had to. "Let it happen," he said, "but we'll be there." The tournament drew 11,000 spectators. That number was a message in itself. 11,000 Saiyans taking time out of reconstruction, out of training, out of whatever else they might have been doing, to come and watch two different ideas about what it meant to be Saiyan settle the question through the only method the Saiyan tradition recognized as definitive. The format was elimination bracket, 12 warriors per side. Sargo's faction, they'd begun calling themselves the Purists, though Sargo himself had never used that word publicly, had selected 12 of their finest. The academy curriculum had selected 12 of theirs. The distinction in philosophy was immediately visible in warm-ups. The academy fighters moved through a pre-fight sequence Goku had helped design. Breathing, ki centering, joint mobility, a focus technique that quieted the mind before the adrenaline of combat flooded in. It was graceful, almost meditative. Several of the spectators in the stands murmured at it, unsure whether they were impressed or unsettled. The Purist fighters did nothing. They sat, or stood, or rolled their shoulders once. They were already ready. They were always ready. Readiness was the baseline, not something you constructed through ritual. The first bell rang. The first 3 matches were devastating, not because the Purist fighters were dramatically superior in raw power. They weren't. The academy curriculum had improved its students significantly, and the ki control work that Goku and Vegeta had overseen showed clearly in the precision and efficiency of the academy fighters' techniques. But precision and efficiency, it turned out, operated on a different timescale than instinct. The Purist fighters didn't think, not visibly, not in the way that created observable delay. They'd trained for decades in a system that treated hesitation as death, and that training was cellular. It lived in the body, below the level of thought. When an academy fighter paused, even for a fraction of a second, even the microsecond it took for trained compassion to assess a situation, the Purist fighter was already through the gap. First match, 31 seconds, Purist. Second match, 44 seconds, Purist. Third match, 1 minute 12 seconds, the academy fighter managing to extend the bout through defensive technique before ultimately losing, Purist. The stands were very quiet. In the fourth match, an academy fighter named Ronak changed something. He stopped his pre-fight breathing sequence halfway through and just stood there, loose, watching his opponent. When the bell rang, he didn't do what his training said to do. He didn't open with the measured technique sequence or the ki probe to read his opponent's flow. He attacked. Ugly, direct, without elegance. He took a hit he could have avoided to land a hit that he hadn't set up properly. He bled from a cut above his eye by the second minute. He was technically losing on points, if this were a points competition, but he kept coming, and he kept coming, and he kept coming. Not with strategy, not with analysis, but with the sheer, unrelenting Saiyan pressure that the Purist system had spent decades cultivating, and that Ronak had just decided in the moment to access, to choose. He won in 4 minutes 20 seconds. Split lip, cracked rib, and a grin so wide it looked like it hurt. The stands erupted. Goku, watching from the upper tier, felt something shift in the crowd. Not a resolution. The Purists had won 3 of 4, and the remaining bouts had every chance of going the same way. But something had shifted in how the 11,000 spectators were reading the narrative. They'd come expecting a demonstration of superiority. What they were getting was more complicated than that. He turned to look for Sargo. Sargo was exactly where Goku had expected him to be, not in the stands, but on a secondary platform, slightly elevated where he could see both the arena and the audience. He was watching Ronak's celebration with an expression of complete neutrality. And then, for just a moment, Sargo's eyes found Goku's, across the arena, across 11,000 people, through the noise and the movement and the morning light. Something passed between them. Not communication exactly, more like acknowledgement. Two opposing ideas, briefly recognizing each other.
Then Sargo looked away. The final result across all 12 bouts was 7-5. Purists. It wasn't the landslide Sargo had perhaps intended, but 7-5, in a format where the argument was that the old ways produced better warriors, was enough. More than enough. The mathematics of it were plain, and the 11,000 people who'd watched the mathematics happen in real time carried those numbers home with them. In the council chamber that evening, King Vegeta sat very still for a very long time after the reports came in. He won his demonstration, the king said. What does he do next? Vegeta stood at the window, looking at the capital in the dark. He waits. He's patient. He lets the 7-5 sit in the public consciousness and grow into something. Stories accrete around victories. In a month, 7-5 becomes 9-3 in the retelling. In 3 months, it becomes 12-0 and somehow represents a comprehensive, systematic truth about which way of being Saiyan is superior. Then we need to counter the narrative. We need to counter the fact, Vegeta said, not the narrative. If we manage the story without addressing the underlying truth, we become exactly what he says we are. He turned. The tournament showed something real. The old method produces warriors who don't hesitate. That's a genuine advantage in certain contexts. We can't argue it away. We have to transform it. Bardock, who was standing in the corner with his arms crossed, said nothing, but his eyes were moving, working, the way they worked when he was constructing a picture from fragments. What context did he pick? Goku asked from the other side of the room. Everyone looked at him. The tournament, Goku said. He chose the context. One-on-one, full combat, no external variables. That's the context where hesitation is most clearly a disadvantage. He walked toward the center of the room. There are other contexts. There are contexts where connection is the advantage, where knowing why you're fighting gives you something the pure instinct fighter doesn't have access to. Name one. Name one that matters.
Goku looked at him. When you transformed into Super Saiyan, Bardock was very still. You didn't transform because of perfect technique, Goku said. You didn't transform because your instinct took over. You transformed because you felt something. You felt that you couldn't be left behind by your son. That emotion, that connection, it unlocked something the pure warrior training could never have produced by itself. Because pure warrior training strips emotion out. It treats emotion as interference. He looked around the room. Sargo's warriors can fight. They fight excellently, but they've optimized themselves for a specific kind of war. Individual combat, direct confrontation, clear enemy, clear objective. What happens when the enemy can't be hit? What happens when winning requires sacrifice instead of victory? What happens when the battle is for someone else's life instead of your own glory? The council chamber was quiet. That's the demonstration we need, Goku said. Not a rematch, something different, something that shows what connection actually produces in the field. And if he simply adapts, Vegeta said, if he takes whatever context we choose and designs around it? Goku shrugged, and for a moment his expression had nothing of strategy in it, nothing of military planning. It was just Goku, tired and honest and stripped down to something fundamental. Then we have an actual war on our hands, and we deal with that when it comes. Northern Range, Sargo's compound, dawn 3 days later. He didn't tell anyone he was going. Bardock landed in the mountain valley outside the compound's perimeter in the blue-gray hour before dawn, when the night wind was still carrying the cold of high altitude. He didn't conceal his ki. That would have been interpreted as an intrusion, a stealth approach, a hostile act. He flew in openly, his signature clear and recognizable, and waited. The compound's outer guard, a warrior he recognized from the old 3rd Legion, a woman named Tava, who had saved the life of one of his former squad mates on a campaign he barely remembered, came out to meet him. She was armed, but she stood easy, not hostile, cautious.
Bardock, she said. I want to talk to Sargo, he said. Does the prince know you're here? No. Something shifted in her expression. Approval, perhaps, or simple respect for the directness. She turned and went back inside, and Bardock waited in the mountain wind. Sargo emerged 5 minutes later. He was dressed plainly, no armor, his hair loose. He looked like a man who had been awake for hours already, which he probably had. He stopped 10 meters away and looked at Bardock with those steady, measuring eyes. Alone, Sargo said. Alone, Bardock confirmed. Sargo studied him for a moment, then walked to a flat stone overlooking the valley and sat on it. Bardock sat on a similar stone nearby. Between them, the valley spread out in the morning dark, deep and silent. You're going to ask me to stop, Sargo said. I'm going to ask you to think about what you're building. I've done nothing but think about it for the last 3 months. You've thought about what we lose, Bardock said. I want you to think about what you destroy. He looked at the valley. 3 months ago, we were dead. All of us, dead. Our planet was dust. Our people were a handful of survivors scattered across the galaxy. And then my son, my crybaby, too soft, grew up on Earth youngest son, wished us all back. His voice didn't waver, but something in it changed texture. He didn't have to do that. He could have wished for anything. He wished for us, for the people who, the last time most of them were alive, would have looked at him as a low-class nothing, not worth their attention. Sargo said nothing. What you're calling weakness, Bardock said, is what motivated that wish, the connection to people, the idea that other lives matter enough to sacrifice your own resources, your own advantage for them. He turned to look at Sargo directly. You want to strip that out and get back to pure strength, but you'd be building a race that would never have brought itself back. The Saiyan race before the resurrection wasn't strong enough to survive Frieza. It took the soft version to actually win.
Frieza is dead, Sargo said. The need for that particular approach died with him. What we need now is something else is coming. The words fell into the conversation with a particular weight, and Sargo went very still. I don't know what, Bardock said. I've had visions before, not clearly, not in a way I can use, but I know the feeling of a future closing in. I felt it before planet Vegeta died the first time. I feel something similar now. He looked at Sargo carefully. If something is coming that requires our entire race to stand together, you are going to have done the most damage possible at the worst possible time. A civil war, even a cold one, even a war of ideology rather than violence, leaves wounds. It divides loyalties. It creates the kind of fracture that an external enemy can split open like a fault line. Sargo was very still for a very long time. The first sun began to edge over the eastern peaks, painting the valley in red-gold light. Somewhere below, a bird native to planet Vegeta's northern range gave its morning call, a low, resonant sound that Bardock had always found, though he would never have said so aloud, beautiful. I respect you, Bardock, Sargo said finally. I always have. You were the most honest warrior in the old empire. You said what you believed, you fought for what you valued, and you never pretended to be something you weren't. He paused. I'm asking our race to be honest about what it is. That's all. Not to hate the humans or to reject what Kakarot represents personally, but to be honest about what makes us us, and to not let that thing be diluted away until there's nothing left. And I'm asking you, Bardock said, to trust that what we actually are is bigger than what the old empire thought we were, that we haven't seen the ceiling yet, that the dilution you're afraid of might be the evolution that saves us. Silence. Wind. Morning light spreading across stone. I won't stop. Not yet, but I'll hear this. I'll carry it. He stood.
Come back when you have more than a feeling about what's coming, Bardock. Come back with something I can see." He walked back to the compound, and Bardock sat on the stone and watched the valley fill with light, and wondered what was worth more, this one conversation or the battle he was increasingly certain was inevitable anyway. 47 days after the tournament. What finally broke the Cold War open wasn't anything Sargo planned.
It was one of his warriors, a young elite named Drak, 20 years old by appearance, though technically 47 in aggregate thanks to the resurrection, who had joined the Purist faction not out of deep philosophical conviction, but out of the simpler, more combustible fuel of wounded pride. He'd applied to the academy. He'd been rejected for behavioral issues, specifically an incident during a sparring session in which he'd continued attacking a downed opponent despite the clear stop signal, breaking the other warrior's collarbone. Disciplinary grounds. Reasonable grounds, most would agree. Drak had not agreed. On a Tuesday afternoon in the lower district's central market, Drak encountered Ronak, the academy fighter who had won his tournament bout by abandoning his training and going instinctive. He encountered him with Ronak's family present, his mother, his younger sister. They were buying food for the evening meal. What exactly passed between them, the witnesses later struggled to reconstruct. It was brief. It escalated too fast for the normal social mechanisms of de-escalation to activate. What everyone agreed on was the end point. Ronak was on the ground. His mother was between him and Drak, her arms spread, her face terrified. His sister was already running for help. Drak looked at the woman in front of him and felt the specific confusion of a man whose ideology had just run into a wall it hadn't anticipated. And in that confusion, with his pride still burning and his certainty shaken, he made the worst possible choice. He shoved the mother aside. He didn't hit her. He didn't hurt her. She stumbled, found her footing, was fine. But he shoved her. He put his hands on a civilian, on a woman who had placed herself between her son and violence, and he moved her out of his way. It was seen by 34 people. By nightfall, it was all anyone was talking about. Not the ideology, not the tournament, not the defense grid breach or the convoy operation or the compound in the northern range or any of the careful, patient, strategic groundwork Sargo had spent months laying. A Purist warrior had shoved a civilian woman in the market. The abstract debate about training philosophy and Saiyan identity had, in one moment of stupid, unplanned violence, become personal, had become real in the way that abstractions can never be, the way that doesn't care about being fair or accurate or understanding context. 34 witnesses became 300 conversations, which became 3,000 in less time than Sargo could have managed if he'd spent a month trying to cause exactly that kind of catastrophic narrative cascade. He found out at midnight when Veska woke him with the communication. He sat in the dark of his quarters and processed it with the same architectural precision he applied to everything. And what he saw in the architecture was a structure that had just had one of its load-bearing walls removed. Not destroyed, removed. There was still a building here, but its weight was now distributed differently, and the load-bearing walls that remained were not the ones he designed for that purpose. Everything he'd built had been designed around the premise of principled opposition. Disciplined warriors making a considered, coherent argument through demonstrable means. The tournament had been that. The convoy had been that. Both had been careful. Both had been scalpel work. Both had been precisely calibrated to avoid giving Vegeta the one thing Vegeta needed most: a clear moral line. Drak had drawn the line for him. Vegeta's quarters. Dawn. Vegeta was already dressed when Bulma found him, sitting in the chair by the window with his armor on and a look on his face she'd seen before. Not anger specifically, not calculation specifically, but the thing those two became when they fully merged. The cold certainty of a man who had finished his decision-making process and was now on the other side of it. "You're going to the compound," she said. "Yes." "With how many warriors?" "Enough." She stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him. Outside, the sky was doing its particular Planet Vegeta thing of turning from black to a deep burnt red before the suns actually appeared, as if the planet itself was taking a breath before the day. Sargo didn't plan this, the market thing. I've been looking at the data patterns. His operational signature is precise, surgical. This was someone acting outside his instructions.
I know, Vegeta said. So you're moving on him for something he didn't do? I'm moving on him for everything that created the conditions in which it could happen. He stood. He built an organization that operates in blind spots, recruits dissidents, and conducts operations without authorization. One of his people used violence against a civilian in public. The connection between those facts is real, even if the specific action wasn't ordered. Bulma looked at him. Be careful. Not of the fight, of what you become in the next 24 hours. Because whoever you are when this is done is who the Saiyan people are going to remember you as. He crossed to her. He put his hand against the side of her face for just a moment, a rare, entirely private gesture, the Vegeta that existed only in rooms without witnesses. I know, he said again. Northern Range, Sargo's compound, mid-morning. Vegeta arrived with 20 warriors at his back, all Super Saiyan capable. None of them in transformed state, because transformed state would have been a declaration of intent that he hadn't quite made yet. He landed 100 meters from the compound's main entrance and waited. The compound's gate opened within 2 minutes. Sargo walked out alone. He stopped 40 meters away. They looked at each other across the distance with the specific quality of attention that two extremely powerful beings develop. A total assessment, an automatic calculation of threat and capability, running beneath the surface of whatever was being communicated by expressions and posture. I didn't order it, Sargo said. He didn't say it apologetically, he said it as a fact submitted to the record. I know, Vegeta said. Then this is about more than Drak. This has always been about more than any single incident. Vegeta stood easy, his arms at his sides, his ki contained and steady. You've been operating an unauthorized military organization within my father's kingdom. You've conducted operations against civilian supply convoys. You ran a breach on the planetary defense grid. And you've spent 3 months systematically building the argument that the governing philosophy of this world is weakness dressed as wisdom. Sargo met his eyes. Every Saiyan here has the right to disagree with that philosophy. Disagreement is not what you've been doing. Vegeta took 2 steps forward, and the temperature of the interaction changed subtly, not through aggression, but through proximity, through the simple physical reality of what Vegeta's power signature did to a space when he chose to let people feel it. You've been building towards something. I want to know what. A long pause. Wind moved through the mountain grasses. I want to know who leads this planet's future, Sargo said. Not what policy we follow, not what curriculum the Academy uses. I want to know, fundamentally, whether the Saiyan race is going to be what it is or become something else. And I believe that question needs to be answered decisively, not managed. He paused. I'm prepared to let it be answered through combat, if that's what you're offering. You'd fight me. I'd fight the idea you represent. You're the best available embodiment of it. Vegeta almost smiled. It was a very small thing, gone before it fully arrived. You realize that even if you won, you wouldn't win. My defeat would change nothing structurally. Kakarot would still be Kakarot. My wife would still be on this planet. The Academy would still be teaching what it teaches. Your defeat would change what people believe, Sargo said. That changes everything else. Slowly, gradually, but everything. Vegeta looked at him for a long moment. Then he turned and looked at the 20 warriors behind him, then at the compound, where he could feel the presence of Sargo's people, 200 plus, waiting, watching, the weight of their collective conviction pressing against the mountain air. My father should make this decision, Vegeta said. Something shifted in Sargo's expression, not quite surprise, but a reassessment. The king. Vegeta's eyes were steady. He leads this world, not me, not Kakarot.
I've refused the throne twice. If this question is going to be answered at the level of leadership, then the actual leader should answer it." Vegeta's eyes were steady. "I'm asking you to come to the capital, to bring your case before my father in open council, before all the people you believe in. State your argument. Let him respond. Let the people hear both." Silence stretched between them.
"That's not what I expected," Sargo said. "I know," Vegeta said. "That's why I'm offering it." The council was held in the Grand Plaza because no chamber in the palace could hold the number of people who came. 60,000, the largest gathering of Saiyans since the resurrection ceremony. They packed the plaza and the streets around it and listened through the sound amplification Bulma had rigged from the palace walls, and the quality of their listening was different from the tournament crowd. Not anticipatory, not hungry for spectacle, but heavy with the particular attention of people who understood that what happened next was going to define something that would last. King Vegeta sat on his throne, brought down to the plaza for the occasion. He was in full royal armor, the old style, pre-Earth influence, the regalia of the Saiyan Empire. But he wore it differently now, not with the automatic authority of a man who had never questioned whether he deserved it, with the considered weight of a man who had thought about what authority meant and chosen to carry it anyway, knowing its cost. Sargo stood before the throne and made his case. He was extraordinary at it. He spoke for 23 minutes without notes, without theater, without a single moment of rhetorical inflation. He laid out his argument the way he did everything, structurally, precisely, with the internal logic of something that had been assembled over a long time by a careful mind. The vulnerability argument, the identity argument, the evolutionary risk argument. The 60,000 listened. When he finished, he stepped back, and King Vegeta spoke. The king was not naturally a philosopher. He had never been comfortable with abstraction. He was a warrior king, a man of presence and decision, not one of contemplation and nuance. But he had spent 3 months asking questions, listening to people he'd dismissed before, reading documents Bulma had prepared, sitting in the low district homes of ordinary resurrected Saiyans and hearing what they wanted for their children. And what he said, in his rough, unpolished way, was something that would be remembered long after the specific details of Sargo's argument were forgotten. "I destroyed our world the first time. Not Frieza. I gave Frieza the planet to destroy by building a civilization that required his permission to exist. I trained warriors and called it strength. I built an empire and called it glory. And I did it all without asking a single one of our people what they actually wanted." He looked out over the 60,000. "My son refused my throne. Do you know why? Not because he is weak, not because Earth made him soft, because he is building something on a different planet that matters more to him than ruling this one, a family, the thing I never gave him enough of." His voice didn't break, but it thickened. "I am not going to be that king anymore, and this planet is not going to be that empire anymore. Not because we are abandoning our strength, but because we have finally learned what our strength is for." He looked at Sargo. "Your argument is heard. Your dissent is acknowledged. But if any Saiyan on this planet takes unauthorized military action against our people or our allies again, you will face the consequences of that action through this kingdom's law, not through ideology, through law." He looked away from Sargo and out over the crowd. "We are not going back to what we were. We are going forward to what we can become. That is my final word on this." 60,000 Saiyans were silent for 3 full seconds. Then the sound began. Not a clean, unified cheer, but the complicated, overlapping sound of a community in the process of deciding something. The sound of individual voices finding individual responses to something they've been holding in uncertainty for months, and gradually, not uniformly, but undeniably, the sound resolving into something that was, at its core, affirmation. Not unanimous, not without doubt, but real. Sargo stood at the edge of the plaza afterward, watching the crowd disperse, and Goku found him there. They stood together in silence for a moment, which was unusual for Goku. His instinct was always toward speech, toward direct engagement, towards filling the silence with warmth. But this wasn't a moment for that. "What do you do now?" Goku asked. Sargo looked at the palace, at the throne being carried back inside, at the Saiyan families moving through the plaza in the late afternoon light. "I don't know yet," he said. The king's argument was better than I expected. Not more eloquent, simpler, cleaner. He paused. He's right that I didn't account for what a leader who admits his failures is actually worth. I modeled a king who would defend the old way because kings defend what legitimizes their position. He didn't. "He changed," Goku said. "Yes." A long pause. "I haven't decided yet whether change is strength or loss." "Why can't it be both?" Goku asked. Sargo looked at him with an expression that had, somewhere in its depths, the beginning of something that was not quite respect and not quite agreement, but occupied a neighboring territory. "That," he said slowly, "is a more interesting question than anything you said at the tournament." He walked away. Not with the bearing of a man defeated. There was nothing broken in his posture. But the direction he was walking in was different. Not toward the Northern Range compound, toward the city. 30 days after the Grand Council. The Cold War didn't end cleanly. It didn't end with a handshake or a reconciliation or the satisfying narrative closure of opposition becoming understanding. Sargo disbanded the compound, formally, with a signed declaration to the King's Council that was precise and legally impeccable, the way everything he did was precise and legally impeccable. The 212 warriors dispersed into the general population, some to the academy, some to independent training, some to new posts in the planetary defense structure that Bulma had certified as fully operational. Drak was tried under the new kingdom's emerging legal framework for unauthorized use of force against a civilian. He received a sentence of 6 months' labor on the reconstruction projects in the eastern damaged districts. It was considered lenient by some. By others, it was considered the first real evidence that the new Saiyan law meant something, that the trial happened at all, that it was public, that the outcome was recorded. The academy curriculum was reviewed again, not reduced, not dismantled, but significantly reformed, incorporating more of the Purist faction's core critique about instinct and the danger of overthought. Bardock, who had declined a formal position on the review board, submitted a written document that became the basis of a new synthesis. The warrior's reason and the warrior's instinct are not opposing forces. They are different modes of a single system. The complete warrior knows when to activate each. Goku read the document 3 times and told Bardock it was the best thing he'd ever written. Bardock told him he'd never written anything before in his life, and this was an extremely low bar, and Goku should stop complimenting him or he'd get embarrassing. Planet Vegeta went back to its interrupted work of becoming something. Bardock's home, late evening. Bardock was alone in the house when it came again. Not the same vision. The visions were never the same vision twice, but it carried the same signature. That specific feeling of a future pressing against the present, looking for the hairline crack through which it could begin to seep. He saw the white-haired figure again, briefly, a flash of it, like lightning, there and gone before his mind could hold it. But this time, there was more. He saw around the figure, not the ruins of the capital, but something else. He saw the Dragon Balls, gray, inert, waiting for their year to pass. And he saw the Dragon Balls responding, not to a wish, to something else, to a presence. Something moving through the universe toward them, drawn to them, seeking them, something that was ancient enough to remember when wish-granting powers of this magnitude had last been deployed in this sector of the universe. Something that had been waiting, patiently, across dimensions and timelines for exactly the kind of cosmic event that a resurrected planet represented.
Bardock sat with his hands pressed flat on the table and breathed. Then he stood up, walked to the communication panel, and called Vegeta. "I need to talk to you," he said when Vegeta's face appeared on the screen. "Tomorrow, early, and bring Kakarot." Vegeta studied him through the screen with those sharp, measuring eyes. "What is it?" "I don't know exactly, but I know it's bigger than what we just dealt with, and I know it's already in motion." New Saiyan Academy, Observation Tower, dawn. The three of them stood on the observation tower as the first sun rose: Goku, Vegeta, and Bardock described what he'd seen, haltingly, the way you describe something that resists the translation into words. The white-haired figure, the burning sky, the Dragon Balls responding to an external presence, the sense of something ancient, something patient, something that had its own agenda and had been waiting for the exact sequence of events they'd just triggered.
"The resurrection wish," Goku said softly when Bardock was done. "You think it drew something?" "I think it announced something," Bardock said. "We put 7 Dragon Balls in one place, made a wish of unprecedented scale, an entire planet, millions of people across 40 years of death, and the energy signature of that wish would have propagated across the universe. Anyone watching for that kind of event would have noticed." "The Grand Priest would have noticed," Vegeta said. "Zeno might have noticed." "Those are our allies," Goku said, "or at least not our enemies. I'm worried about who else noticed." He looked out over the training grounds below, where the morning's first session was already beginning. Hundreds of warriors moving through the new curriculum, the synthesis Bardock's document had created, instinct and reason moving together in something that was more than either had been separately. Something they'd built through the conflict, something that wouldn't have existed without Sargo's challenge. "There's a timing element," Goku said. "The vision Bardock had, the Dragon Balls responding. When do the Dragon Balls become active again?" Bardock said nothing, but the answer was written in his eyes. 7 months, Vegeta said quietly. The numbers sat in the morning air. 7 months until the Dragon Balls recharged. 7 months until they were powerful enough to be sought, to be used, to be a prize worth moving toward from across the galaxy. 7 months for whatever had noticed them to close the distance. "Is the white-haired figure the same thing as whatever's coming?" Goku asked Bardock. "I don't know," Bardock said. "Maybe it's a result of what's coming. Maybe the figure is what happens if we fail to stop it." Goku nodded slowly. He turned to look at Vegeta, and Vegeta was already looking at him. That specific look they'd been exchanging for decades. The look that meant, we've reached the edge of what we can plan for, and now we navigate by instinct and trust. "Then we have 7 months to get stronger." "We have 7 months to figure out what we're getting stronger for," Vegeta corrected. Below them, the morning training continued. The red sands of planet Vegeta caught the rising light and turned it gold. And in the training yards, the warriors of a resurrected civilization learned, imperfectly, contentiously, through argument and struggle and the slow, unglamorous work of growth, how to be something new. Something that was worth defending. Something that something old and patient and powerful, somewhere in the dark between stars, had already decided was worth destroying. The ship had no designation in any registry. It moved without propulsion signatures, without energy bleed, without the kind of spatial displacement that tracking systems were designed to detect. It didn't travel through space so much as it moved alongside it, in the specific way of things old enough to have learned the gaps. At its center, in a room that had no corners, curved walls, curved ceiling, the geometry of a place built by minds that found right angles unnatural, something sat in meditation. It had a form, not always. It preferred formlessness, preferred the particular freedom of existing without the constraint of shape. But it was in a form now, because forms were useful when processing, when categorizing, when making decisions. The form was broadly Saiyan. It had chosen that deliberately, the way you put on the clothing appropriate to a meeting, a gesture of preparation. Its hair was white, and its eyes were flat gold. Around it, suspended in the air like a constellation of small suns, 7 objects glowed, not the gray stone of dormancy, active, warm, pulsing, orange and perfect, and full of the wish-granting power that had been building in them across whatever subjective time existed in the space between dimensions. A second set of Dragon Balls, identical to the ones on planet Vegeta, because they were the ones on planet Vegeta, not copies, not replicas, but the genuine artifacts, removed without disturbance in the 3 days between Bardock's vision and the morning on the observation tower when the 3 warriors had discussed the timeline. 7 months, they'd said. They were wrong about the timeline. The figure opened its eyes. The flat gold deepened into something older than the universe.
It is time, it said, to no one, to everyone, to the specific frequency at which certain cosmic truths are simply stated like facts about mathematics, not chosen, not argued, not subject to negotiation. And in the room with no corners, the Dragon Balls pulsed once, twice, and then erupted with light. On planet Vegeta, 7 gray stones sat in the palace vault, and no one realized yet that they had never been Dragon Balls at all. The resurrection wish did not simply rebuild the planet, it sent a signal. Across Universe 7, across the membrane between universes, across dimensions that the mortals of Earth and planet Vegeta did not yet have names for, the signal propagated. A wish of unprecedented scale. A dead world returned, millions of lives reclaimed from the permanence of death. The Grand Priest heard it. Zeno heard it. And something else heard it. Something that wore the face of an angel in training, something that had been watching Universe 7 with the patient interest of an academic studying a subject, and who now moved with the sudden urgency of a scholar who has just found the anomaly that reshapes everything they thought they understood. The cosmic balance had shifted, and the question that had always lived at the heart of the Dragon Balls, should all deaths be reversible, was about to be asked at a scale that had nothing to do with balls and wishes and sacred dragons. It was about to be asked by a force that existed specifically to make sure the answer was no.